how it sustained us, and also the history that disconnected us, right, from this corn in different ways. And we know that there are some varieties that might still exist among us, but kind of today is all about maybe just starting a conversation to bring all of that history and culture back together again.
And those aren't dead.
Those don't seem to be. This is a.
This project was called the Ancestral Corn Reclamation Project. And really it was both a rematriation and a little bit of a cultural reclamation project at the same time. Some of our ancestral corn seed was returned back to Native community here in the southeastern part of North Carolina. And some of this corn seed had been disconnected from us for a long time, well over 100 years, a couple of varieties, almost 200 years. So this project came about sort of serendipitously. It actually started about a year ago, and for whatever reason, clear as a bell, it popped in my head, you should try Carolina Gold rice. So I thought, well, I'll drive down towards Columbia, near where Anson Mills is located, and they're the both producer and seller of Carolina Gold rice. And I'll see if I can find a bag, and then it would be neat to cook it and try it. So I got on Anson Mills' website and was looking through some of their products, and one particular product stood out to me, and it said Carolina Gourd Seed Corn. And I thought, and understanding the fluidity of corn, and the fluidity of varieties, I thought, well, if there was Carolina Gourd Seed Corn in Dillon, which of course we know the Schrawls and the Peaties were down that way as well, then that would apply to Lumbee people today, as well as other indigenous communities in North Carolina. So what I did was I read that passage several times, and I picked up the phone and worked my way through departments until I got a hold of Glenn Roberts, who then opened Pandora's box, which was very meaningful. He put me in touch with some scholars and scientists that are actively working with these varieties of corn, more so to produce seed, but these are corn geneticists. They are researching the DNA of corn, where it came from, how it got to the Carolinas and when, and also the exchange back and forth from here to Mexico, also down through the Caribbean and around, kind of in this circular pattern, but also throughout the Americas. It is, and we're just scratching the surface on this, but it really is a dynamic story. So for me, from that moment and then having some subsequent conversations, I thought, Native community needs to know about this.
You all had, as tribes, multiple kinds of corn.
Right.
For these corns that they're providing here, like the gourd seed and some of these heirloom varieties, is that those are multi-purpose. Like, we've gotten to the point where, dent corn's for cattle and sweet corn's for humans. And the old kinds of corn were for everything. And so, what people ate as sweet corn was green corn.
Tell me when to stop.
Okay.
We're doing a small space.
Okay. Right, that's true.
It just means so much to me. It's because when Nancy said, "Here's your corn," my heart just filled up. It began to race. My tears, it was hard for me to hold back the tears because we found a connection to our people, to our ancestors, and I could feel that spirit. In working with our healing green space and healing plants, medicinal plants, through the process I found out that my great-grandfather was a plant doctor. And beforehand I didn't have much interest in plants, but now it's just revived. A renewal has come up within my spirit.
Sangre de Cristo, the price block, because it has this strong, red, striking colors.
There's a lot of different ones that are called Sangre de Cristo. What's this one called?
That's love it.
Love it, okay. So does this look familiar to you all?
No,
Okay.
not what we grew up with.
You didn't have multicolor. It was white or yellow.
White, yellow.
This is the.
And the love it is what came out of
See,
Robinson
I-
County, is that right?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Like we had pigs and cows, horses, so that's what we used our corn for. It was a source for our food plus for the animals.
A tribal community came together. All of the North Carolina tribes were invited, along with the Commission of Indian Affairs, and it was very important that this happen on a sovereign government level, that the seeds be returned to tribal governments, and then the tribal governments make the decision of how to disseminate, share seeds. So everyone came together. Who was able to come were the Coharie, the Waccamaw-Siouan, and the Lumbee, which were very generous in hosting this event at the Cultural Center site. And we had a day-long conversation surrounding the seeds themselves, how this project came together, the history, both as it exists in an indigenous way, but also the exchange of seeds even to southern planters, and how it took off kind of in a colonial fashion throughout the Southeast, and then becomes normalized as part of Southern culture. And so we had sort of a more moderated conversation, and then it broke down into where groups were sitting around talking, very organic, and it was really beautiful. At the end of the event, seeds were given out, and Native community went home with their seeds. There was conversation centered around what does this mean for cultural reclamation, right? In terms of perhaps bringing back green corn ceremony, creating new ceremonies around this corn, sharing it with community. There was a lot of information and advice and stewardship surrounding how to plant, where, when, and to keep this corn in its pristine state the way it is now.
So you've got to plant this corn so it won't be near each other, because you don't want it cross-pollinate, right?
right.
I think she's and VA.
And then you get the right consistency, and then it's going to set up like through a few batches, so you come back in and you add a little more water and stir it up. But it's fried in hot grease, and it makes a patty. And I have some pictures I can show you in a minute. Jamie
It
is
looks like a little pancake.
And Dad's was always like a half-inch thick, really crispy on the edges, but basically just warm in the middle or hot. So it was raw cornmeal in the middle of it. But then I like it all the way cooked. But the part I wanted to mention was the part about the corn not working. I don't know the science of it, and I don't know what the difference in the corn between North Carolina corn, because even in DC I couldn't buy northern corns and make it work. So I don't know what that's about. You guys know, I don't know what the difference in how the corn's grown and milled, but it will not work unless you use corn from here.
And then the other thing too, that I think there are things that we do that's modern, like all Native communities, is a translation of that tradition, is like corn season is a big deal. Like people get together, families get together as a tradition. We have these big pans and we harvest our corn and we blanch it and we cut it off and we freeze it. And usually that's like a big family gathering. We do that every year. We call it putting in corn. And so there's corn on the cob that goes in freezer bags, corn cut off the cob with the milk that's put in freezer bags. You share. That's a big time of sharing that corn. And then it goes in your deep freezer. And then you have corn all season. And that's coming up soon. I don't want to speak for everybody, but do y'all do that too with Coharie?
We did that.
And y'all call it putting in corn?
Right.
Yeah. Putting up corn, sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, that I think is an extension of that tradition, right? Community come together to harvest corn and then put up corn and save it for the year. And then also the particularity around fried cornbread is a really finely gristed cornmeal that's a corn flour that makes our fried cornbread. Like you can't use regular grainy cornmeal for that. And that's like a staple. We eat that. I mean, probably every day.
We have a healing grain space on our tribal grounds, and we'll use these corn seeds as a teaching technique for educational purposes, and hopefully we can save the seed and continue to share them with community members.
The biggest goal for this project was to put seed back in the hands of tribal community and take it back home. So whatever happens with this seed from this point on, it's home now, and it's up to the tribal communities to determine what its use is, whether that's cultural and or for food purposes or milled products, whatever it is, it's up to the tribal communities to decide what happens next with the seed.